Recording in progress.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining today. I am Annika Izagari. I'm Communications Director with the Committee to Protect Healthcare. We appreciate you joining on this very, very busy day to hear from physicians about how today's Supreme Court ruling will impact their patients and why it's important for state leaders to protect abortion access in the wake of it. We ask that you only identify these physicians as Committee to Protect members or how they choose to be identified. Please do not identify them by their workplaces unless they explicitly state that. I also wanted to clarify, we had originally we were going to have Dr. Schickler from Tampa on this call, but she was unable to make it because of the news and how it's impacted her work. But we are joined by three great physicians who are able to speak about the impact today. And also Dr. Grande is available to respond to questions in Spanish during the Q&A portion, if that would be helpful for you. So without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Prabhakaran to begin.
Thanks, Annika. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sujatha Prabhakaran. I'm an OBGYN and an abortion care physician, currently practicing at Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida. As an OBGYN for almost 2 decades, I know how truly devastating today's ruling is for patients and people across America who access abortion care. And so their access will now be severely restricted and potentially even taken away entirely. By stripping away this federal constitutional right to an abortion, the Supreme Court has really opened the door to enforce dangerous laws that will make it difficult or even impossible to access basic health care. That impacts us deeply here in Florida, where Governor DeSantis has signed a law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. That law is cruel. It has no exceptions for rape or incest. And now we know that that law will be able to be enforced. Let's be clear. When that law takes effect on July 1st, Floridians will have significantly less access to abortion care. This is a crisis moment. As physicians, we are gravely concerned about our patients who will be put in harm's way because of the ruling and the law here in Florida. We're also concerned that it won't stop here. For decades, politicians have been working to take away access to abortion, which is essential health care. With the Supreme Court's ruling, extremist lawmakers now have the authority to pass even more restrictive laws, including a complete ban. Some Republicans in our state have already expressed that they want to have a complete ban on abortion care. We cannot emphasize enough how catastrophic that would be for our patients and for families across Florida. We worry that with these bans, patients will be forced to travel hundreds of miles to get the care they need, or be forced to carry an unexpected pregnancy, which we know firsthand could be harmful or even deadly. Make no mistake, people's healthcare and lives are on the line. That's why we're speaking up and calling for action. To protect the health and well-being of pregnant people and families across our state, Florida leaders should be working to protect and expand abortion access, not place further obstacles in the way of care. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Grande to speak.
Hi, my name is Dr. Cecilia Grande. I'm an OBGYN. I practice in South Florida. I finished my residency in 1998. So I've been 24 years in practice. The past 18 only doing gynecology. I want to say that although I'm not an abortion provider, I am very concerned about this law. Abortions right now is safe and is a normal part of healthcare. Decisions around abortion and any other healthcare should be made between the patient, their family, their doctor, without interference from judges or politicians. We listen to our patients and trust they know their bodies, and what they need to be able to do to have a life that is safe and healthy. In some cases, that may be an abortion. We firmly believe that our patients should have autonomy over their bodies and the ability to determine their own future. We also believe that physicians should be able to use our extensive knowledge and training to help our patients get the care they need. But under the new law signed by Governor DeSantis, doctors who provide abortions after 15 weeks will be deemed guilty and it would be a felony. Doctors could receive up to 5 years in prison for doing what they're trained to do. Imagine your doctor being imprisoned for doing what we're trained to do, for getting you the care that you need. But we want to be clear here that our number one concern is our patients. A wide variety of patients seek abortion care. Patients seek abortion care for a variety of different reasons, and all of them are personal and all of them are valid. When people aren't able to access this care, they can suffer physical, emotional, mentally, and financially. And as doctors, we're horrified by this unprecedented ruling and feel obligated to stand up for our patients who should be able to make their deeply personal decisions about pregnancy, about an abortion in a private way. We must hold accountable those lawmakers who trample on the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship and put people's health and lives at risk. And I would like now to introduce Dr. Sutherland, who's going to join us now as a panelist. Thank you, Dr. Sutherland.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grande. I am also very concerned with this ruling of the Supreme Court. I'm currently a retired OBGYN. I practiced OBGYN for 34 years and worked with women at all stages of pregnancy, including pregnancies that for various reasons it was best to not continue those pregnancies. Bans on abortion, like the one which will be taking place in Florida after July 1st, really put our women in harm's way. We've seen this play out in Texas, where they now have an abortion law on the books that forbids abortion after 6 weeks. What happens for these women, many of whom don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks, is they are forced to either travel out of the state or are forced to carry an unexpected pregnancy that was not part of their life plan. We know that for many of these women, they don't have transportation to travel out of state. They don't have the funding. They can't take the time off work. This puts them in very difficult positions. The ones that are most affected are the low-income women, or women of color, or women who live in rural areas. And they need our help. We can't forget about these women. Unfortunately, if they are unable to travel out of state and they must carry a full-term pregnancy, this also puts them in harm's way, because the mortality and the illnesses that can occur when you carry a full-term pregnancy are much greater than those if you have an early abortion. This is based on a number of different things. There's high blood pressure, there's diabetes, there's heavy excessive bleeding, preeclampsia, lots of different illnesses that can result in maternal mortality, which unfortunately in our country is greater than in most other countries in the world. Again, women don't have access to reproductive health rights. They also don't have access to good maternity coverage. They don't have good access to good child care. So for multiple reasons, this puts women in harm's way. Some of it is physical, some of it is mental. Imagine being forced to carry a pregnancy that's the product of rape or incest, or the product of an abusive relationship where you can't get out of the relationship because of carrying a pregnancy. So as physicians, we need to speak out, and we are speaking out, calling on our Florida lawmakers to act to protect our patients. our elected officials need to expand reproductive rights for women. They need to expand abortion rights, not further.
Oh, Dr. Sutherland, you got put on mute just toward the end.
Oh,
there we go. Just the last couple of sentences.
Yes, well, I'm just saying that as physicians, we need to speak out. We need to tell our elected lawmakers that they need to provide better access for reproductive health care for women, not restrict it even more. And so, again, thank you all for your help on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Sutherland. We will now open it up for questions if you want to either use the Q&A function in Zoom or chat your question in the chat box. We will do our best to ensure that all of them get answered. First, right off the bat, I know there was a question for Dr. Grande. If you could just elaborate a little bit more on what you said about the impact on abortion in Spanish, that would be great.
So I'm going to switch to Spanish. Thank you. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es la doctora Cecilia Grande. Yo soy ginecóloga en el área del sur de la Florida. Llevo 24 años en práctica privada. Los ginecólogos estamos extremadamente preocupados por la decisión de hoy de la Corte Suprema. En el estado de la Florida, nuestro gobernador, el gobernador DeSantis, antes de que esta ley pasara, decidió poner en la Cámara de Representantes una ley para hacer los abortos después de las 15 semanas ilegales. Esto es un problema que tenemos muy grande porque la decisión de terminar un embarazo debe ser simplemente una decisión del paciente y de su médico. Y no todos los pacientes pueden tomar esa decisión tan temprano como las 15 semanas. Muchas señoras no saben ni siquiera que están embarazadas antes de las 15 semanas. Los médicos estamos en estos momentos en un lugar difícil porque a nosotros nos enseñan que nosotros tenemos que respetar la autonomía del paciente y estamos teniendo que someternos a decisiones tomadas por gente que lo único que está considerando es la política y no está considerando el bienestar del paciente. Si tiene alguna otra pregunta, algún otro detalle, por favor, póngalo en el chat para que Anika me pase la pregunta.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. We have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is for Dr. Prabhakaran from Chris. Have you taken any preparations, planning or practical, in the weeks since the Supreme Court leak of the memo that Roe v. Wade might be overturned?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chris. Yes, we have been preparing for patients who will need to travel from other states, potentially here to Florida. So we know that there are bans that will go into effect right away in many of the southeastern states. And so we anticipate that patients will need to travel from those states to access care here in Florida. So we have a patient navigation program to help those patients be able to access care here. And then we also conversely are having our patient navigators prepared to help patients who are beyond 15 weeks access care outside of Florida. And regardless of that, despite all of that help, we know that people will still not be able to access the care that they need. And particularly at risk are people who are already vulnerable or marginalized. So people of color, people of diverse genders, people who have lower socioeconomic means, all of them will be profoundly impacted by this awful ruling, regardless of how much we work to help them.
Thank you. Kind of similar question, but might be able to elaborate a little bit. What impact does this decision have on your practices? And is there any other advice for what people can do if they find out they need to have an abortion for their own health? I guess we kind of already answered that. Moving on, how are clinics preparing for the July 1st law? Is there any additional effort to reach out to clients or even prospective clients about how this will affect the availability of their abortion?
I'm glad to answer that. So, one of the devastating effects of both the Supreme Court ruling and then the ruling that happened in Florida this spring is that it adds really to the confusion about whether and how patients can access abortion care. So I've already seen patients, even just a week or so ago, I saw a patient who said just how grateful she was that she was able to get the care that she needed because she thought that abortion was already illegal in Florida. So, we're adding even more difficulty to what is already difficult care to access. So we are doing we're doing lots of work to make sure that patients know what care they can access and how to access that care. And no matter, despite that, we know that patients are already being harmed, even by just these rulings. So we appreciate all of you helping us get out the word about, the fact that abortion is still accessible here in Florida and remains so right now, so patients can get the care that they need.
Thank you. Dr. Grande, could you speak a little bit about those preparations and assistance for patients in Spanish? You're still muted, Dr. Grande. There we go.
Okay. Buenas. La doctora que dirige Planned Parenthood para la Florida nos informó que hasta ahora en las clínicas para que el paciente tenga más información y ver cuáles son las opciones que ese paciente tiene. So, todavía tenemos que hasta las 15 semanas el aborto en la Florida sigue siendo legal. No sabemos qué va a pasar en el futuro, pero hasta ahora todavía hay acceso a ese procedimiento que muchas veces es necesario. Si el paciente tuviera más de 15 semanas, entonces las clínicas de Planned Parenthood pueden dar la información al paciente en cuáles son las opciones. Y las opciones pueden ser ir a otro estado. Las opciones pueden ser mandar a buscar por correo ciertas medicinas. So, yo no puedo dar muchos detalles en qué es lo que las clínicas en la Florida están haciendo porque yo no proveo terminaciones, pero sí nosotros tenemos una gran cantidad de clínicas que las corre Planned Parenthood que ya se están preparando para lidiar con pacientes que tengan más de 15 semanas y ver cuáles son las opciones. Pero hasta ahora, estas clínicas proveen un servicio que es excelente y extremadamente necesario. Yo espero que esto le haya contestado la pregunta. Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. A question from Jack. What do you expect will happen next in Florida? Are you feeling any optimism despite today's ruling? That's for anyone to answer.
I'm glad to answer if someone else would like to. I am both fearful and optimistic. I know, as I said earlier, we know that many of the Republican lawmakers have already said, their goal is to ban abortion here in Florida. And so we know that is certainly a possibility, and it is something that we must fight against. And I'm, every day I do this work and I meet people who know how important this care is to so many people and are willing to do the work to fight for it. So I'm hopeful that those people will win this battle to protect the healthcare that people need. And I want us to all take seriously the very real threat that is faced here in Florida.
Great question. We have a couple more questions in the chat box. And Dr. Prabhakaran, I think you touched on this a little bit already, but do you want to elaborate about the demand that you've seen since the first draft opinion was leaked? Have there been like more calls, questions, more visits?
Sure, I'm glad to touch on that. I think that perhaps Dr. Grande had an answer to the prior question. I saw her raise her hand. I just want to give her space if she would like to answer.
Thank you. One thing that I wanted to add, I am hopeful because the Committee to Protect Healthcare, the League of Women Voters, Ruth List, the Democratic Party, a lot of the political groups that we have in Florida are trying really, really hard to get out the message that we cannot just sit and not bring this to the attention of the media and to our patients. Therefore, I encourage our listeners, if they have, if they're concerned, to reach out to the League of Women Voters. That is not a partisan, it doesn't belong to any party, but it has been trying to protect this right that Florida women should have. Because I am a little worried that if things remain as they are, we may have also some restrictions on other options for contraception that are not abortion, like it's happening in other states. So I do think that we can maybe persuade our elected officials to restore our rights. Having said that, we need to stay vigilant and we need to register and we need to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. And I'll go, if it's okay, Annika, I'll answer the prior question or the other question about calls and questions. So, one thing I do just want to say too, as physicians, we sometimes get questions about how medically sound any of these awful restrictions are. And I want to just say, the American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Pediatric Association, the Family Practitioner Organization, all of these organizations are very clear in their opposition to the overturning of Roe, because as doctors, we know that when we make restrictions to access to healthcare, we don't protect patients at all. We actually cause more harm. We increase the risk of maternal mortality, which the United States and Florida particularly are well behind other comparable places in the number of people who die while pregnant or in the process of delivery that is avoidable. And we know that these restrictions are going to increase all of those complications. And then to go back to the other question about, are we receiving more calls? We are, and the other thing that folks may or may not be aware of, but about 6 weeks ago, we also had to implement in Florida a 24-hour waiting period, which wasn't in place before. So, we've in the last 2 to 3 months have seen significant impact very quickly on the access to care that patients have. And that, as I said before, really impacts even more profoundly people who already struggle with access to care, either because they don't have insurance, they have difficulty with transportation, they're homeless, or are people of color or gender diverse people already are struggling, and this just makes it even worse.
Absolutely. Looks like we have one more question. This one is for you, Dr. Sutherland. I know you are no longer practicing, but have you heard from any former patients or anyone else in your community in the Polk County area? How does this decision affect the care and advice you're giving to people in different socioeconomic groups?
Yes, thank you for that question, because it is interesting, the changes that we're seeing in Polk County, and I'm sure Polk County is a very conservative area, is not the only county where we're seeing this. As was noted before, not only are the patients confused, but some of the doctors are confused about what they can and cannot do. Just to bring this down to the patient level, there was a patient I became involved with recently who was a teen. She was a mature teen, very difficult family situation. Mother would throw her out of the house if she ever became pregnant. That took time. She had saved enough money for a pregnancy termination. By the time she had enough money, by the time everything was set up with the court, she was already 12 weeks. The cost of the abortion had gone up. She no longer had enough money. She sought an abortion provider. There was no one who would provide an abortion at her level of pregnancy, so she had to go to Fort Lauderdale. I mean, we're talking about a teen who's taking time off school for all of these steps that need to be taken. The 24-hour rule means you don't just go to the doctor's office once, you have to go to the doctor's office twice. You don't take time off work once, you take time off work twice. I mean, you know, the nitty-gritty of what this means for women who need to have health care for their own safety, their own mental and physical health is devastating. I mean, this is just devastating. So yes, we in our conservative county of Polk County, we are seeing effects on women's lives already. And the 15-week abortion ban hasn't even gone into effect yet until July 1st.
Thank you, Dr. Sutherland. Looks like one more question for Dr. Grande, if you're available to answer in Spanish. Are you worried that patients might look for illegal options for abortion after 15 weeks and put their lives at risk?
Absolutely. I'm going to switch to Spanish now. Definitivamente, uno de los riesgos grandes que nos preocupan como médicos y que pasaba antes del año 73 es que los pacientes a veces hacían procedimientos con personas que no estaban completamente entrenadas y llegaban al hospital con infección, con hemorragia. Esto no es una cosa única de Estados Unidos. En muchas partes del mundo donde el aborto no es legal, en los escritos médicos de nosotros leemos reportes de la mortalidad tan grande y de las personas que tienen infecciones, terminan con esterilidad. Eso sí, me preocupa bastante, porque desgraciadamente muchas cosas se pueden obtener ahora por el internet. No necesariamente el paciente, cuando obtiene estas medicinas sin consultar con un médico, va a tomarlo de la manera adecuada. Entonces ese paciente va a llegar al hospital con hemorragia, con infección. Restringir un procedimiento médico que hasta ahora ha sido legal y que hasta ahora no está asociado con complicaciones es completamente ilógico. Nosotros no tenemos en estos momentos en la Florida una incidencia enorme de aborto. Los abortos han disminuido en los últimos 5 años. La única razón por la cual esta ley, este gobernador está tratando de imponerla es para brillar desde el punto de vista político. Pero a los médicos nos preocupa las consecuencias que eso tiene con los pacientes. Eso definitivamente que hay una preocupación, y sobre todo en las salas de emergencia, porque los médicos de sala de emergencia van a tener pacientes llegando y no van a necesariamente saber qué hacer con el paciente, y van a tener miedo a repercusiones criminales. Eso sí, esto es un problema. Espero que eso haya contestado la pregunta. Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. I'm not seeing any other questions, so we'll go ahead and conclude for today. I put this in the chat, but if you would like a recording of this press conference, please email me at annika@committeetoprotect.org, and I can get that over to you this afternoon. So thank you all again for joining. We really appreciate you covering what the physicians have to say about this really devastating ruling. And thank you so much, Dr. Sutherland, Dr. Grande, and Dr. Prabhakaran for your time and sharing your thoughts on this ruling today. We really appreciate your communication on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.